I give the call to the, on indulgence, the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I want to give a shout-out to Jet Jarvis, who's 12 years old, from Dalveen in Queensland in the electorate of Maranoa. He's a student at Scots College there at Warwick, and he came in today because he's the Squiz Kids PM for a Day competition winner. And he's here he is. He had his big hat on in my office, Mr Speaker, but it's gone. But he's a delightful young man here with the Squiz Kids organisation that really promote ideas and promote education and do podcasts for young Australians. His idea for the day was that people should buy fruit in supermarkets, even if it doesn't look perfect, because that way we save and help the farmers, but help each other and avoid waste as well. And I know from bananas that aren't bent the right way sometimes are rejected, and they end up at food bank, and they still get used. But a bright young boy, and I wish him all the very best.
Indulgence, the honourable member for Maranoa.
Well, I thank you, Mr Speaker, but can I firstly also thank you and the leadership role you've taken in taking the parliament to youth of Australia and particularly the schools. This is testament to a legacy you'll leave as a Speaker of this parliament in making sure that young people are engaged with this parliament. So thank you to you, Mr Speaker, first. I don't think there's been enough acknowledgement of that. But to Jet and to his family, you are a credit to your family and to our part of Maranoa. Jet and his family only moved to Maranoa a couple of years ago, and to be able to understand how important food is and how it's produced and how farmers produce it and all the costs that they put into it, and then if it doesn't look perfect, that they get nothing for it when it tastes the same, is a great message to come from a young man with a great future, and it's great to see someone from Maranoa might make it to the top one day. Well done, mate.
Welcome to Jet. We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. The government blamed Australians for buying fuel, then finally declared a national fuel crisis. The government said the fuel crisis was not a supply problem and then rushed through emergency supply laws. The government said cutting the fuel excise was a thought bubble and then adopted our fuel tax cut. How can Australians have any confidence in the Prime Minister's leadership through this crisis when his position changes every day?
Call to the Prime Minister. Order. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Every single day I've acknowledged that Australians are feeling stretched and under pressure because of the impact of the war in the Middle East. That has been the consistent position that we have taken. And those opposite might like to wish it away or erase it. I notice that the member for Canning didn't do that on Sunday. Australia is not a participant in the war in the Middle East, but Australians are feeling and seeing the impact here at home. At home. And we stand with overwhelmingly the majority of Australians are absolutely doing the right thing, as they always do. There are some who've taken more than what they need. That's the truth. Just look at your devices and you'll see examples of that. And that has meant that there's pressure on the system, more pressure than there should be. It is a fact that every single ship that was due to arrive up to this point has arrived. That is just a fact. It is also a fact that we changed the fuel standards in order to ensure that every bit of fuel, petrol and diesel produced here stays here. It is also a fact that we released 20% of the reserves and prioritise that going to regional areas. It is also a fact that we have engaged with our international partners to make sure that supplies continue to come here. But it is also a fact that we have worked across states and territories, across the political system, for the National Fuel Security Plan, agreed with leaders from both sides of politics through the National Cabinet, so that we have a system going forward that is clear through the 4 stages. We want to stay at stage 2 where we are. There are challenges ahead of us. It's also a fact that because prices have increased right around the world, we sought to have a responsible plan to make a difference as well to people's cost of living issues, as we always do. And we thought it through. We finalised. The states and territories met again at 12 o'clock today and finalised a position consistent with what we've asked them to do, something that was forgotten, so they don't benefit from the GST windfall, just like we have raised the issue of registrations and the road user charge as well. There are challenges ahead of us, and no government can just eliminate all of the pressure which is there. What we can do is act in an orderly, responsible way, not try to create issues, but try to create an appropriate response, which is precisely what we are doing.
The call to the honourable member for Leichhardt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government taking action to assist Australian families, farmers and businesses who are under pressure caused by the ongoing war in the Middle East? What actions have been taken to boost Australia's fuel security and supply?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Leichhardt for his question and acknowledge that not only has the member for Leichhardt been dealing with these issues, but also has been dealing with the consequences of the cyclone in his electorate and has been working closely with Premier Crisafulli and working with Minister McBain to make sure that his community is looked after, particularly areas like Cowan and others, small communities that have been really hit hard. We are taking action, Mr Speaker, to help Australians who are under cost of living pressure caused by what is the biggest spike in petrol and diesel prices in history, and that is a global result of the war in the Middle East, where Australia is not a participant, but we're still impacted by it. Easing that pressure, helping people, is our priority. That's why our action to halve the fuel excise for 3 months starting tomorrow is so important, saving Australian families and farmers 26 cents for every litre of petrol and diesel when they fill up at the servo. That's why our action reducing the heavy vehicle road user charge to zero is so important as well, so Australian trucking can keep Australia's economy going. And that's why our action empowering the Commonwealth to underwrite shiploads of fuel, fertiliser and other essentials is so important. And I note that action was somehow criticised in the question that was asked just before, because they said if there's no problem, why are you worried about supply? What we are doing is making sure that we get ahead of issues, that we plan appropriately. That's what good government does. And the idea that that somehow is a contradiction between that and saying that every ship that was due to come here is here is just extraordinary, extraordinarily irresponsible from those opposite. And I ask them to really think through the way that they're behaving during what is a real challenge. A real challenge. If we'd have behaved like this in COVID, just absolutely extraordinary.
Order. The member for Forrest.
Now, we're working with the National Cabinet, with industry, with producers, with suppliers and farmers, taking action. We understand this is an uncertain time and we understand that Australians are under pressure, but that's why we're focused on them. That's why we want to look after people. That is the Australian way. That is our government's way. Working around the clock, looking at every practical measure to make a positive difference, and then taking action.
The call to the Manager of Opposition Business.
Thanks, Speaker. And my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, how many service stations in Australia are out of fuel?
call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. In New South Wales, out of 2,400 service stations, there are currently 247 without diesel, 61 total stockout. In Victoria, where we have 1,800 roughly service stations, there are 77 with no diesel and 39 with no unleaded petrol. Those figures were Queensland. Apologies, Mr Speaker. Victoria, where we have 1,627 service stations, there are 82 with no diesel, 40 with no petrol. In South Australia, where there are 700 roughly service stations, we have 20 without diesel and 13 without unleaded petrol. In Western Australia, where there are 771 service stations, there are 18 without diesel, 14 with no unleaded petrol. In Tasmania, 294 service stations, 8 without diesel, 15 with one or more grades unavailable. In the Northern Territory, 180 service stations, 5 without diesel, 4 with no unleaded. The Northern Territory government does advise me that some of those would be as a result of road closures and flooding, but in the interest of full disclosure, I do provide those figures. The ACT, 5 without diesel, 2 without unleaded. As previously advised, those shortages in the ACT are normally filled within the same day.
Before I call the member for Petrie, I'll just do some quick acknowledgements. I'm pleased to inform in the House today that we have representatives of Basketball Australia and the Australian Olympic Committee, including five-time Olympian in basketball Lauren Jackson, AO, and Tess Magden, dual Olympian in basketball. We've got a delegation from the Municipal Association of Victoria. As part of the delegation, we have Councillor Alex Makin, the Mayor of the City of Port Phillip, the Mayor of the City of Maribyrnong, the Mayor of Murrumbidgee Shire, and Councillor Jennifer Anderson, the President of the Municipal Association of Victoria. And sitting in the last row of the gallery, right in front of me, is, as guests of the member for Mitchell, are Jason and Anthea. Jason has battled motor neuron disease for over 8 years and has shown incredible resilience and is one of the longest-living people with MND. They are here at Parliament House today as ambassadors for MND, and I'm proud to promote this important cause. Give a call to the member for Petrie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What actions is the Albanese Labor government taking to help with the cost of living, including the cost of fuel, and how does this compare to other approaches?
Give a call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I hope you won't mind, and I hope the wonderful member for Petrie won't mind me welcoming Lauren Jackson to the House as well. Absolute goat of Australian basketball. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who hopes that the next time we see Lauren Jackson in the Parliament, she's not sitting up there, but she's sitting somewhere over here, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, when it comes to the very real and very serious pressures that Australians are facing, particularly but not only at the petrol bowser, this government and this Prime Minister is stepping up and stepping in to do what we responsibly can to take some of the edge off these pressures that people are feeling right around Australia. I think it's worth acknowledging that obviously Australian families are not sitting around the table in the Situation Room making the key decisions about this war in the Middle East, but they are sitting around the kitchen tables working out how they will pay for the consequences of this war in the Middle East, primarily, as I said, when it comes to petrol and diesel, Mr Speaker. And that's why the Prime Minister and I, working with our colleagues, including the Minister for Transport, the Minister for Energy and others, did announce yesterday that we will be halving the fuel excise from April, Mr Speaker, to give some welcome relief to Australians, particularly Australian motorists and truckies who are doing it tough. What this means is a fairly substantial saving at the petrol bowser for 3 months. Now, this is timely relief, it is targeted relief, it's temporary relief, and it's also responsible relief. One of the main jobs of this government is to work through these pressures that people are facing right around Australia and to step up and do what we responsibly can, and that's what this is all about, Mr Speaker. Now, this is not the only thing that we're doing to help with the cost of living. We've got the tax cuts coming. We've got more bulk billing and cheaper medicines. We've got the student debt relief. This is all about easing some of that pressure that we understand and acknowledge that people are under. Also today, Mr Speaker, and I know the Minister for Employment will want me to mention that there was a very welcome outcome when it comes to youth wages from the Fair Work Commission. And also earlier today, the Reserve Bank made it clear that in October they will be ending the surcharges on credit cards and debit cards. I acknowledge the member for Bennelong and others who've campaigned for this outcome for some time in our economy. These fees and charges drive Australians absolutely nuts, and the Reserve Bank has said that they'll be winding them back from October, Mr Speaker. And so across a whole range of areas, we're doing what we responsibly can to ease the cost of living. We know that this war in the Middle East is having very serious consequences for the global economy. Australians are paying for that, a hefty price for that, at the Bowser and beyond, and we're doing what we can to help.
Give the call to the member for Wentworth.
My question's for the Treasurer. 1/3 of all occupations in Australia are in shortage, yet Australia has 253,000 permanent migrants already here that are working below their skill level. This includes 20,000 teachers, 50,000 engineers, 16,000 nurses and 1,300 electricians, all unable to teach, care and build to their full capacity because of slow and costly skills recognition pathways. What concrete steps will the government take to ensure that skills recognition of migrants is faster, fairer and more affordable?
Great question.
Give a call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It is a great question and it reflects a number of concerns of a number of our colleagues who raise these issues with me from time to time, and I see it in my own community. I see this as a very important economic issue, but also a social issue, a social justice issue, making sure that when people come to our country that they can participate fully, whether it be in the labour market or in other ways. And it is, as the member well knows, as a participant at the Economic Reform Roundtable last year, that this is a core part of the productivity puzzle as well. And it's an essential part of delivering the single national market for workers that we talked about in that forum and have been working hard to implement. In fact, the very first piece of legislation introduced into this parliament under this Prime Minister was to create Jobs and Skills Australia. And in that legislation and in the amendments, we strengthened JSA's role in the migration system and in skills recognition as well. JSA released a significant study last year as well, working out the best way for education, migration and employment systems to work together to recognise the very important contribution that migrants make to our labour market and to our country more broadly. We're also provided funding to streamline skills assessment for migrants. That's benefited more than 13,000 applicants, particularly in the construction occupations, and we've given the Minister for Skills new powers to help improve the quality and timeliness of our skills assessment system to help make the system fairer and more efficient. Mr Speaker, having said all of that, we know that there is more work to do in this regard, and that's why last November I agreed with my state and territory counterparts to prioritise work on recognising skills, particularly in areas of acute demand like construction, health and emerging industries, and we have a number of ways that we're going about this important work. I've also had a number of discussions with probably half a dozen of the colleagues over here in recent weeks, some of them in recent days. I shout out the important work the Minister for Employment, the Minister for Skills, Home Affairs, Multicultural Affairs, Housing and other colleagues as well, Mr Speaker. We also look forward to the insights that Martin Parkinson and Violet Rumulaitis will be sharing tomorrow at the Press Club, warming up the crowd for the Prime Minister's appearance at the National Press Club on Thursday. I look forward to hearing what Martin and Violet have to say on these really important issues and to working very hard on next steps.
Give a call to the honourable member for Bendigo.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to ensure heavy vehicle operators are supported through fuel disruptions, and how does it compare to other approaches?
Call to the Minister for Infrastructure, the Minister for Transport, the Minister for Regional Development and the Minister for Local Government.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Can I thank very much the member for Bendigo for her question. She knows just how important the announcements we made yesterday are for regional communities like hers. I've been meeting regularly with the transport and fuel industries together to make sure that we are working off the same information, and I'll meet again with them tomorrow. They told me that heavy vehicle operators were struggling to cover the costs of rising fuel prices caused by the war in the Middle East. Following National Cabinet yesterday, of course, the Prime Minister announced that our government would reduce the heavy vehicle road user charge to zero for 3 months. We're also deferring the next scheduled increase of the heavy vehicle road user charge by 6 months, and we're also halving the fuel excise for petrol and diesel for three months to save 26.3 cents per litre at the pump. States and territories have agreed to look at their registration charges for heavy vehicles in conjunction with what we've done, and also to continue to discuss the GST and do all they can to ensure that there is some of that returned, the increase returned. The legislation to do the fuel decrease was introduced just this morning. It will give transport owners and operators much-needed relief, easing fuel costs, while they continue to carry food, medicine and other essentials right the way across this country. It has been welcomed by the Australian Trucking Association, the Tourism and Transport Forum, Business Council of Australia, Gas Energy Australia, the Australian Retail Council, the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the National Road Transport Association, as well as many others. The ATA has said in total the decision will save trucking operators 32.4 cents per litre. It is the lifeline that small trucking businesses need. As we come into Easter, TTF has said anything that helps bring down transport costs across the supply chain is a win for the entire tourism sector. This work, of course, is complemented by the changes to the Fair Work Act, which passed the parliament yesterday, so that truck drivers can quickly renegotiate their rates with Australia's major retailers. We are working day and night to shore up our fuel supply, to help people with the cost of living and to keep Australia moving. We're not going to take advice from those opposite on how to support truck drivers, because what you did when in government, you dropped the fuel excise. You forgot about the road user charge that meant that truck drivers couldn't get the same relief that we were facing those cash flow challenges. And this time I remind them that their costings, frankly, were $1 billion short. $1 billion short. Did you think it was going to be for free? Clearly you did. $1 billion short.
Give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Yesterday, the Special Minister of State said adding more politicians to the parliament is, quote, what great Labor leaders do. At a time of crisis, will the Prime Minister rule out putting upward pressure on inflation by choosing to spend more than $600 million on more politicians?
Order. The Minister for Defence Industry is warned. The Prime Minister has the call.
Mr. Speaker, let me make this as clear as I possibly can. I am more than satisfied with both the number of members of the House of Representatives and their composition.
Give the call to order. Give the call when the House comes to order. Give the call to order. Members on my left will cease interjecting. Order. Order. The Minister for Agriculture will cease interjecting. The Leader of the Opposition will cease interjecting. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the Honourable Member for Newcastle.
Thank you. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister representing the Minister for Foreign Affairs. How has the Albanese Labor government been assisting Australians returning from the Middle East, and how are Australia's collective efforts supporting the region?
Give the call to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Defence and the Minister representing the Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Well, I thank the member for her question and very much acknowledge her leadership in this government. The war in the Middle East is now entering its 32nd day. The commencement of this conflict occurred across a region which is home to some of the largest Australian expat communities in the world. Indeed, 115,000 Australians live across the Middle East. From almost the moment that hostilities started, the skies above Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Doha were closed, Immediately prior to the conflict, on any given day, about 11,000 Australians transited these airports, which meant that when hostilities started, there were thousands of Australians who were stranded. Over the last 4.5 weeks, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade has dispatched crisis response teams to the region, and they have facilitated the return of more than 10,000 Australians back home. For the Australians who continue to live in the region, we continue to provide our travel advisories. There is a no travel advice in place for 11 countries in the region. Immediately prior to this conflict starting, there were more than 100 Defence Force personnel engaged in 7 missions across the region, most of whom were at our operational headquarters at the Al Minhad Air Base near Dubai. On the 10th of March, we responded to a request from the UAE to supply an E-7 Wedgetail to help in the support of the UAE, and later that week that plane and its 85 support crew were in the region, and since then it has conducted multiple missions which have helped in the security of the UAE. We have also supplied a number of advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles to the UAE. Now, obviously, the war has had a significant impact on the global oil price, which has been felt through increased fuel prices here in Australia and around the world. And with the effective closure of the Straits of Hormuz, the global fuel supply chain has also been disrupted. At the outset of this conflict, there was a very clear strategic objective to deny Iran ever having the acquisition of a deployable nuclear weapon, and we support this. I remind everyone that just this year, Iran has killed thousands of its own citizens. It has been the sponsor of terrorism around the world, including here in Australia. That said, this conflict is now in its 5th week. It's been going a long time. It has had a major disruption on the global economy. And while we continue to support the strategic objective, which is clearly important, in every respect we seek to support the reduction of hostilities until negotiations.
Give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Question is to the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister rule out expanding the size of the parliament?
Order. Order. Members on my left. Order. Members on my right. The member for Lingiari. The Prime Minister has the call. Order. Order. When the House comes to order. Yeah. The Minister for Employment, we're trying to hear the answer. The Prime Minister has the call.
Mr Speaker, I take the interjection from those opposite, which was about bubbles. I mean, this is extraordinary. At a time when there's a war in the Middle East, when there are significant economic impacts.
Order. The Prime Minister will pause. Order. The manager will. The manager will. Order. The manager is entitled to raise his point of order, and he shall do so now.
Thanks, Speaker. And it goes to relevance. The question could not be simpler. It's the second in this area, and the Prime Minister should come.
The Leader of the House.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Just to the point of order, I refer to page 568 of practice, where it says it is relevant to contrast the action of the government with another point of view. It's exactly what the Prime Minister is doing.
Yes, and the Prime Minister, I think, had said about 21 words. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the manager further to the point of order. We're trying to deal with this.
That's not what the Prime Minister was doing in his answer.
Well, order. I don't know what the Prime Minister was saying because he was about 20 words into an answer, so we won't be able to take any more points of order on relevance. We've already taken that point. The manager raised the point of order. I'm going to listen to all the Prime Minister, and I will ensure that he be directly. The Leader of the Opposition, The Leader of the Opposition, we're trying to deal with the point of order. If you could assist the House, that would be great. I appreciate that. So the Prime Minister needs his answer to be directly relevant about the question. Once again, yes, no, not able to deliver that for the manager on this occasion. And I know you're keen on that, but I'm keen to make sure the Prime Minister is directly relevant, and he shall continue.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I was responding, of course, for an interjection from those opposite. Let me make 3 points. I made 2 before, so we'll make 3 and see if they get it. One is, I am satisfied with the current number of seats in the House of Representatives. That's 150. That's 150 with 12 senators from each state. Point 1. Point two is, I'm also very satisfied with the composition of the current parliament, Mr Speaker. Very satisfied with the current composition.
Order.
Oh, there are some over there as well. That's true. And I like some of those over there too, Mr Speaker, to be fair. And point 3. I have been very privileged to have the best campaign director I've ever seen in Paul Erickson. If I was to say to Paul Erickson, we've got 94 seats, but how about we throw it all up in the air and see how it lands, I reckon Paul Erickson would have a pretty clear response.
Give a call. Order. Give the call to order. Members on my left, give the call to the honourable member for Corangamite.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
No. Well, the House is going to come to order. Order. Members on my right. The member for Corangamite has waited patiently for her question. She will begin her question again when the House will hear her in silence.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. With the war in the Middle East impacting global fuel and energy markets, how has the Albanese Labor government taken action to protect Australians?
The call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Corangamite for her question. I very much enjoyed visiting the Viva refinery in Geelong with her not that long ago, as I've done previously with the Deputy Prime Minister. They're both very proud of the workers there, as we are, and I thank the member for Corangamite for all the work she does. Now, Mr Speaker, the focus of the government since February 28th has been ensuring the supply of energy to Australia. And I'm pleased with the actions we've taken, like increasing the amount of fuel available through releasing 20% of the minimum stock obligation, changing the sulphur rules, changing the diesel rules. All this has been necessary in the face of the most volatile energy situation, certainly since I was born, Mr Speaker, that the world has seen. This is the action the government has taken. And I'm pleased to inform the House, as we previously have, that any cancelled ships have been more than replaced. And today the latest advice to me is that there are now, as we speak, more than 55 ships on their way to Australia laden with fuel, and we are expecting and have contracted 3.7 billion litres of fuel to arrive in Australia during the month of April. Contracted, locked in, owned by Australian companies, and this is a good thing. But we also need to prepare for any eventualities in this uncertain environment. That's why the government acted quickly after energy companies, oil companies, fuel companies raised with us early last week the increasing volatility in the oil price. It was too risky in the future potentially to buy these cargoes, that we acted, and the legislation was introduced on Monday after being announced on Saturday and was passed through the House of Representatives last night, and I hope and expect will pass through the Senate this evening. This gives Export Finance Australia the capacity to finance and work to ensure that those spot cargoes, which are available but that are very expensive and very risky, come to Australia for Australian use. That's what this government has ensured by this action, and that's a very good thing. But the member for Corangamite also asked me about energy more broadly. And our work there hasn't stopped. Despite our focus on petrol and diesel, our work on electricity hasn't stopped, and nor have Australians stopped. And I'm pleased to inform the House of a small milestone today, that as of today we have now passed 300,000 home batteries installed since the 1st of July. In fact, 300,188, 1,508 of them in the electorate of Corangamite. Australians storing their renewable energy for the night, reducing their use of gas and reducing the use of gas in our system more broadly, which is good for affordability and good for reliability as well, because that solar energy cannot be interrupted by any international dispute, Mr Speaker. That solar energy can be stored for the evening. Australians are reducing their bills and their emissions. That's a policy that this government will keep implementing. Others have announced its abolition. We won't let that happen because 300,000 Australian households have done it, and many more thousands of households are planning to do it in coming months.
Has concluded. With the call to the honourable member for Goldstein.
My question is to the Treasurer. As a direct result of the government's runaway spending, the average Australian mortgage holder is now paying $27,000 more in interest a year under Labor. Will the Treasurer guarantee that the budget won't add further pressure to inflation and to interest rates?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. He's got a lot of nerve asking about the fiscal position, having just gone to an election promising higher taxes, bigger deficits and more debt if they'd won the election, Mr Speaker. And so we stack up our record on responsible economic management against theirs any day, Mr Speaker. Now, when it comes to the budget position, to give the honourable members a sense of the magnitude of the savings that we found, including as recently as the mid-year budget update in December. In every single one of our 7 budgets and budget updates, we found savings. And there will be more savings in the budget in May. $114 billion already so far, including $20 billion of savings in the December update. Now, to give you a sense of that, it took those opposite something like 7 budget updates to find the same amount of savings that Katie Gallagher and I found in December, Mr Speaker, and that gives you a sense of how ridiculous it is to be lectured on fiscal responsibility by those opposite, Mr Speaker. And so the budget in May will be another responsible budget.
Order.
What we have been able to achieve so far is to help engineer the biggest positive turnaround in the budget position in nominal terms since Federation. We turned a couple of big Liberal Party deficits into a couple of Labor Party surpluses. We got the deficits down. We banked most of the upward revisions to revenue when those opposite used to spend most of them. We found ways to make room for our priorities, Mr Speaker. And so the budget in May will be a responsible budget once again. Now, obviously, we don't finish the budget on the last day in March. We finish the budget closer to the first week in May, and we hand it down in the second week of May, Mr Speaker. And what that budget will contain is another effort on savings, another effort on tax reform, more effort on productivity, working through these issues in a methodical and considered way, which is a hallmark of this government's responsible economic management, Mr Speaker. Now, those opposite wouldn't know the first thing about responsible economic management. When the member for Hume was the Shadow Treasurer, he took to the election a policy for higher taxes on 14 million working Australians, and he still managed to find a way to have bigger deficits and more debt, Mr Speaker. And so if their argument is that an extra couple of $2 billion on fuel excise relief for Australians, which they called for, if their argument is that will put upward pressure on inflation, then they are conceding that the $11 billion bigger deficit that those opposite would have had they won the election this year would have made our inflation challenge and our other challenges in our economy worse under them rather than better.
Call to the honourable member for Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. How is the Albanese government holding social media companies to account, and how are other countries responding to our world-leading action to prevent social media harm?
Good work. With the call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
I thank the member for Hughes for his question and for his efforts to make online safer for all the kids under his stewardship in Hughes. Mr Speaker, since Gen Alpha got their first smartphone and their first social media account, they have been connected to an addictive dopamine drip. Targeted algorithms, doom scrolling, persistent notifications and toxic popularity meters have stolen their attention for hours every single day. And as a nation, Australia took bold and decisive action to protect our kids and to give them 3 more years back from the persuasive and pervasive pull of those algorithms. The eSafety Commissioner's first compliance report, released today, shows that 5 million under-16 social media accounts have been removed or deactivated or restricted as a consequence of Australia's world-leading social media law. Despite this remarkable progress, the report also shows that some social media giants are simply not doing enough. Some seem to be trying to get away with doing the absolute bare minimum. The eSafety Commission report exposes unacceptable systems being adopted by age-restricted social media platforms, including allowing under-16 users to repeatedly attempt age assurance until they pass, not doing enough to prevent underage users whose accounts have been deactivated from immediately opening a new one, and ineffective and inaccessible pathways for parents and for others to report underage users. All of the platforms covered by our social media minimum age requirement said they would respect the law. If these companies want to do business in Australia, they must obey Australian laws. And as the independent regulator, eSafety is actively investigating potential non-compliance in relation to 5 platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok and YouTube. And if eSafety finds these platforms have systemically failed to uphold their legal obligations, I expect the Commissioner to throw the book at them. Australia's leadership in online safety has started a global movement, with more than a dozen countries now following our lead. Just this morning I met with Canada's Minister for Culture and Identity. These leaders are asking Australia to share our expertise and experience. The drumbeat against social media harm is growing. The time for accountability is here. We started with our world-leading social media minimum age, and we will hold them accountable for it. And we are working every day to introduce a digital duty of care this year that puts the onus on tech companies to protect Australians from online harm before it occurs.
Give a call to the honourable member for Warringah.
To the Prime Minister. 2 years after an Israeli airstrike unlawfully killed Australian aid worker Zomi Francom in Gaza, Israel has failed to provide transparency, accountability, a formal apology or compensation. The UK and Poland have launched coronial inquiries and commissioned international probes into the deaths of their citizens. What tangible progress has the government made to secure justice for Zomi since meeting with President Herzog, and will the government support a humanitarian peace prize in Zomi's honour?
Call to the Honourable the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Warringah for her question. I will meet the member for Warringah this afternoon with Zomi Francom's brother, Mal, this afternoon, and I look forward to having a respectful conversation with him and personally expressing my condolences for the tragic loss of life, which should, of course, never have occurred. Zomi Francom was an aid worker working for the World Central Kitchen. Her and 6 of her colleagues were killed in an outrage, and Australia expressed that view very publicly and continued to do so. Tomorrow, tragically, is the 2-year anniversary of this tragedy, and I have certainly raised the issue very directly, most recently with the Israeli President Isaac Herzog during his visit here to Australia. Last year, at the United Nations, when I was there, Australia led the world in launching the Declaration for the Protection of Humanitarian Personnel. Penny Wong, our Foreign Minister, has done extraordinary work there, seeking to honour the courage and kindness of Zomi Francom and her colleagues. I look forward to meeting this afternoon. This is a tragic loss. We'll continue to work each and every day to do our best to ensure that there is transparency and appropriate action.
Give a call to the honourable member for Deakin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting workers, including low-paid workers in particular, to earn more and keep more of what they earn?
To the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Deakin for his question and, of course, his strong commitment to workers to keep more of what they earn. This Labor government is absolutely committed to getting wages moving again, especially for our low-paid workers. It is this Labor government that's advocated each and every year for a wage rise for workers on minimum award wages. And this Thursday, or the Thursday that's just been, our government made a submission again to the Fair Work Commission calling for an economically sustainable real wage increase for our lowest paid workers. This would help almost 2.7 million workers right across the country. Of course, over the term of this Labor government, minimum wages have increased by over $9,000 a year. Now, as a result of this government's reforms, we have also made sure that gender equality is at the heart of the Fair Work Act, which has led to the Commission delivering for workers who have been undervalued for too long. And of course, it has been our government that has funded wage increases for our hard-working aged care workers and early educators, recognising the very, very important work they do. And it is this government that has legislated to protect penalty rates and overtime rates for workers who deserve to be properly paid for working unsociable hours. And a real opportunity to thank all of those who will be working over the coming Easter weekend. And this Labor government is also restoring balance at the Fair Work Commission, so both workers and employers get a fair hearing before the Commission. Now, I'm very pleased to inform the House that this morning the Independent Fair Work Commission has ruled that young adult workers should earn adult wages. This government welcomes the decision to abolish junior rates for 18 to 20-year-olds working in retail, fast food and pharmacy. Today's decision means that tens of thousands of young adult workers will earn more at this important time of their lives. Now, in its decision, the Commission considered the need for time for employers and business to adjust and has recommended that these pay rises be phased in. Now, young adults face unique challenges to getting a start in life, keeping up with the cost of living and building their economic security. And I would like to recognise the SDA Union in particular for pursuing this issue in the Commission and their advocacy for young workers. While those on the other side might dismiss young workers, it's only a Labor government that will stick up for workers.
Call to the member for Lyne.
My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Australia's fuel supply relies on Middle East oil shipped to refineries in Asia. Minister, how many oil tankers have left the Middle East for refineries in Asia since the 28th of February?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
How many ships are going from the Middle East?
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for the question. There are currently more than 53 ships on their way to Australia from refineries around the world: Asia, United States, Mexico, other places. And I can confirm 3.7 billion litres are contracted legally to arrive in Australia over April. Now, as we've been very clear, there are risks in the supply chain because it is true. Asia gets the majority of its oil from the Middle East through the Straits of Hormuz. That is true. That's why we've taken the actions we have taken, like releasing more of the minimum stock obligation, but most particularly the legislation that will pass the Senate this evening. That's why, to be prepared. Now, Mr Speaker, Asian refineries don't just supply Australia, they supply Asia too. That's how it generally works. And, of course, we've been in constant contact, the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister and I, with our respective counterparts, and we're very pleased with the way those conversations have gone.
Call to the honourable member for Hunter.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry.
how is the Albanese Labor government delivering support to our farmers, producers and exporters to keep our food production strong and to help manage the impacts of the conflict in the Middle East?
Give a call to the Minister for Agriculture, the Minister for Fisheries and the Ministry for Forestry.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I do want to thank the member for Hunter for that question. I know that his region has some great produce that he's very proud of, and he also knows why it's really important to keep our food system production very, very strong indeed. And as I've said previously in this place, Australia does produce more food than we consume. But we do know that the conflict in the Middle East is having impacts globally, and it's putting pressure on our food producers here in Australia. That's why, Mr Speaker, the Albanese Labor government continues to work day and night to help our farmers manage the impacts of this conflict in the Middle East. We're taking immediate action to support industry, to help keep our exports moving and to help Australia's food system remain strong. I've just met again before question time with stakeholders from across our agriculture industry, and we are listening to their concerns, which is why today our government has taken a decision to defer the full cost recovery for export services for 1 year to 1 July 2027. Now, this will help give our farmers, producers and exporters facing input cost pressures more certainty in the midst of global uncertainty. The President of the NFF, Hamish McIntyre, said today, and I quote, "The package of measures provides welcome breathing space for farmers and exporters facing sustained input cost pressures and market uncertainty." Mr Speaker. Now, we know that this certainty is so critical for our farmers and producers, and it builds on the practical support that is always available for our farmers and primary producers. And that includes the Farm Household Allowance, concessional loans from the Regional Investment Corporation, independent financial counselling through the Rural Financial Counselling Service and the Farm Managed Deposit Schemes, always available for our farmers when they need it. While our government continues to support farmers, fishers and producers facing these cost pressures, we're also working to ensure they have the critical inputs of fuel and fertiliser. Today, we've also announced that we'll be establishing the new Fertiliser Supply Working Group. The group will include representatives from key government agencies and industry organisations such as Fertiliser Australia and the National Farmers Federation. This responds to a direct call from Fertiliser Australia and other key stakeholders, and it builds on the work that we are already doing as a government to improve the availability of fertiliser, including, of course, amending the legislation to underwrite the purchase of fuel and fertiliser by the private sector, working with the ACCC to monitor and coordinate fertiliser supply, and working with industry and engaging with other countries to find alternate supplies of fertiliser. Mr Speaker, we'll continue to work with farmers and industry to make sure that we can help shield them from the impact of this global crisis.
Before I call the next member, I'm pleased to advise the House that in the gallery has just joined us is Dr Guru Prakash Prasan, who is visiting Australia from India as part of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade's Special Visits Program. And I give the call to the honourable member for Ryan.
My question is to the Treasurer. Can you confirm that oil and gas giant Shell has for years paid no petroleum resource rent tax? And even with your recent changes and war prices for LNG, Shell will now at best only pay a few cents per dollar of revenue. Isn't it time for a 25% tax on gas export revenue so gas corporations like Shell pay their fair share?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Speaker, and thanks to the honourable member for Ryan for her question. I acknowledge that there are a range of views on this issue, and as I understand it, the Senate agreed yesterday afternoon or last night to have a committee to look into some of these matters that the honourable member raises with us. This government believes that Australians do deserve a fair return from the natural resources that they own. And that's why in our first term we made changes to the PRRT so that offshore gas companies pay more tax sooner. The ATO's latest tax transparency report shows that the introduction of the government's reforms increased the number of entities paying PRRT from 11 to 16 in the most recent data, and that oil and gas companies paid almost $12 billion in PRRT and company tax in that year. When it comes to individual companies, the honourable members asked me about Shell in particular. PRRT payments are not separately disclosed at the company level in the ATO's data, as I suspect the honourable member knows. But I do understand from publicly available information that Shell's most recent tax transparency report disclosed around $3 billion in taxes and other payments. A bit over 2/3 of that was corporate income tax, and almost 1/3 of that was royalties and other taxes. The other point that I would make to the honourable member for Ryan is that a key feature of our changes to the PRRT is a 90% cap on deductions, which applies 7 years after a project begins generating revenue. So for Shell, as I understand it, if you think about Gorgon and Prelude LNG projects, that 7-year period is expected to be exhausted, I think this year or next year, certainly soon, meaning the deductions cap will kick in and PRRT will be paid on those two projects. Now, the government has also taken significant steps more broadly to strengthen tax transparency, including the introduction of public country-by-country reporting and improvements to the Transparency Code released by the Board of Tax. Here I want to shout out the great work of Assistant Minister Lee over there, and to some extent Minister Molino, and before him Minister Jones. We work closely together to try and make the tax system more transparent in this regard, and we'll continue to focus on our big agenda to make sure multinationals, including oil and gas companies, pay their fair share of tax, including more disclosure and minimum tax, reforms to debt deductions and funding for compliance, and, of course, those important changes that we made to the PRRT. I acknowledge the honourable member would like us to go further, but the government has made important steps in this regard already.
Give the call to the honourable member for Bullwinkle.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Emergency Management. How has this higher risk weather season impacted communities across Australia, and how has the Albanese Labor government responded?
Give the call to the Minister for Emergency Management, the Minister for Regional Development, the Minister for Local Government and Territories.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Cook for her question and acknowledge the impact that bushfires has had on our own electorate. This higher-risk weather season started with Tropical Cyclone Fina, which impacted the top end, as well as the northern Kimberley coast in Western Australia. I met with communities impacted by Fina on Tiwi Islands and in Darwin, seeing the damage firsthand and meeting with officials at the Incident Control Centre in Darwin. Following Fina, Australia experienced bushfires in New South Wales and Tasmania, and I spoke with locals impacted in Carryong and Dolphin Sands about what they had experienced and met with local fire crews. December saw the start of storm season, with monsoons impacting north and northwest Queensland, and we saw significant livestock losses, road closures and towns cut off. And I know that the Julia Creek Tyre Centre, a shout-out to the crew there who hosted not only a number of people in this place but also a number of community events. The Cloncurry Airport was significantly damaged, and I joined the Prime Minister and Treasurer at the airport where we announced funding for its repair. Of course, we then had a record heatwave across southern Australia, which brought devastating impacts to Western Australia and Victoria in January. Can I say our paid and volunteer fire crews did an absolutely amazing job in what was relentless conditions, battling fires for a number of weeks, supported by crews from across the country as well as New Zealand and Canada. I saw firsthand the community spirit in towns like Alexandra, Euroa, Ruffy, Yark, Bendigo and Harcourt. In Harcourt and Ruffy, people gathered at makeshift relief centres where locals were supporting each other, running barbecues, providing ice drinks, non-perishables, real Aussie mateship on display. And more flooding then followed in Queensland and the Northern Territory, followed by Tropical Cyclone Narelle. We saw communities in Katherine, Daly River, Palumpa, Numbulwar and Jilgmingan evacuated, and a shout-out to the ADF, including RAF-based Tyndall, for volunteering in their own time to support local communities before a formal request was lodged for clean-up support. Disaster recovery funding arrangements have been activated in all of these areas, as well as a number of Australian government payments to support communities. I want to thank all the members in this place and the other place who have been supporting local communities over this season. Our government is working year-round to prepare communities in the face of natural disasters.
We recently announced 96 projects in round 3 of our $200 million Disaster Ready Fund. It included projects including levee upgrades, flood mitigation works, bushfire warning systems and cyclone shelters. We've established the National Emergency Stockpile so that we can provide supplies from sandbags to emergency accommodation and electricity generation. We've increased funding to the National Aerial Firefighting Fleet. It's been a really tough high-risk weather season for communities, but across the community, across all levels of government, we'll continue to help communities.
Give the call to the member for Parkes.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change, Energy, and the question is, in his last answer, the minister said there were 53 ships on their way to Australia, and the minister said 2 days ago that there were around 81 ships scheduled to arrive in April. How many ships does the minister expect to arrive in Australia in the month of May?
Order. Give the call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Order. Members on my right will cease interjecting. Order. The Minister for Social Services, the Minister for Agriculture. Order. The member was heard in silence. He wants an answer to the question, and the minister now has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for his question. I'll set it out as clearly as I can. There are currently more than 53 ships on their way to Australia. Some arrival is imminent, others are just leaving the refineries as we speak. So that's an average. Of course, a ship from the United States takes about a month to get here. That's a lot quicker than that from Singapore and Malaysia. So those two comparisons the honourable member have made is just not a fair comparison. It's apples and oranges. We do expect, on average, 81 ships a month to arrive. That's a historical average. That is the case, and that's what all the evidence is. Well into May now will continue. So that's why we keep giving the Australian people those factual updates, so that they have that. And I can confirm 3.7 billion litres on the water to Australia as we speak. The member for Lyne asked me before about deliveries out of the Middle East to Asia. I can say around 46 ships have left the Middle East through the Straits of Hormuz since this conflagration broke out. That is way down on pre-conflict levels. That should not come as a surprise to the honourable member. That's why we're taking such actions as we're taking. Also, Saudi Arabia has increased their exports from the port of Yanbu, so they don't have to go through the Straits of Hormuz. I've been in contact with my colleague and friend, the Minister for Energy of Saudi Arabia, His Highness Prince Abdulaziz Al Saud. He has obviously had plenty to do over the recent months. I've had that relationship through him, through my role in the international discussions, which is a good thing for Australia. Mr. Speaker, I'd submit, and we'll continue. Mr. Speaker. We'll continue. The Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister and I will continue to engage with all our counterparts.
Order. Give the call to the honourable member for Lindsay. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Resources and Northern Australia. How is the Albanese Labor government creating new jobs and strengthening our economic resilience by growing Australia's critical minerals industry?
Give the call to the Minister for Northern Australia, the Minister for Resources, and wish her happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's a very kind present. But I really want to thank the member for Swan for her question today. Another great birthday present. The member for Swan is a brilliant advocate for the resources sector. She's worked in the sector, proud of her time in the steel caps and the high vis. And she's not the only one on this side of the House. The members for Moore, for Bullwinkle, for Hunter, for Spence, and I'm sorry if I've left out other former resources workers here, and all of these members that have worked in that sector know much more than all of those opposite put together. And, Mr. Speaker, those members and all of the members on this side are backing Australian ingenuity and capability, which brings in new jobs, new investment and new opportunities in mining, in processing and refining. We are strengthening the mining industry because the Albanese government is the true party of the resources sector. Now, Now, Mr Speaker, those words often trigger those opposite in some pretty strange responses, and that is because they simply can't face the fact that Labor is delivering for the resources industry and has been delivering from day one in government. We have committed over $28 billion to support our critical minerals industry. We have now legislated into law the Critical Minerals Production Tax Incentive, legislated last year with absolutely no help from those opposite. It was designed with the resources industry and is an absolute game changer for critical minerals and rare earths. Just yesterday, our $1.2 billion Critical Minerals Strategic Reserve passed this House of Representatives, and we will begin delivery on that almost immediately once it passes through the other place. We are delivering our $3.4 billion Resourcing Australia's Prosperity program through Geoscience Australia. They've already found potential deposits of rare earths. We have delivered $1 billion for critical minerals investment through the National Reconstruction Fund, already invested in Liontown underground lithium mine and also the Alpha High Purity Alumina project in the seat of Flynn. We have delivered $885 million in loans for 6 critical minerals projects through the Northern Australia Infrastructure Facility. That's over 3,000 jobs, Mr Speaker, $6.6 billion in public benefit right across the country. We have delivered more than $150 million in grants to the Critical Minerals Development Program, the Australian Critical Minerals Research and Development Program, and also $10 million doing work on common user infrastructure and processing facilities with Western Australia, Tasmania, Victoria and the NT. Mr Speaker, this government is delivering for the critical minerals industry and for resources sector workers right across the country because we understand the resources sector. We back it in every single time.
Minister's time has concluded. Give the call to the honourable member for New England.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for the Environment. Fire ants are currently on the march from Brisbane. We have a huge issue with, obviously, if it gets out, reduction in the cattle cattle herd, a reduction of around about 40%. It will be one of the most devastating things that happens to the fauna of Australia, from koalas to echidnas to anything that basically travels along the ground. It's going to be devastating to the lifestyle of Australian people. We need funding by MyEFO. What is your plan?
The call to the Leader of the House representing the Minister for the Environment and Water.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. And the question effectively goes to the need to be able to cull feral animals. And the member for New England... Oh, fire ants. Sorry, I thought you said firearms. I apologise. Sorry. I apologise. That's what I thought. No. Sorry, well, fire ants, and I know from my days, the challenges in Queensland with fire ants, which have been going on for decades now. And there have been many occasions where people have claimed that we should simply accept the damage, and that's a claim that was put to me when I was Environment Minister way back in 2010. And the view of the government then and the view of the Albanese Labor government is we need to continue the fight because of the extraordinary damage that those fire ants do. In that time, notwithstanding all the attempts at containment that have been involved in government funding back then, government funding that I think started under the Howard government, that continued during the 9 years when the member was on and off the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, that the containment funding has continued as it's continued under us. No one has been able to successfully prevent the spread. That said, were it not for the containment funding that has been given, we would be in a much worse situation in Queensland with respect to fire ants than where we are now. And the intention of the government and the commitment to be able to continue to do what is possible on that invasive species remains. There has never been an invasive species where we've successfully, you'll find very few examples where we've successfully eradicated. Very few examples. That doesn't mean that the efforts that are made with respect to containment aren't worth doing. They do. They make a difference, and that's why they continue.
Give the call to the honourable member for Spence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. I refer to the question asked in the House yesterday when the PM committed to speak personally to Josh, a farmer from the Eyre Peninsula, about fuel supplies. Can the PM update the House?
Call to order. Give the call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Spence for his question. And yesterday I got a question from the member for Grey. It concerned Josh, a farmer on the Eyre Peninsula. And I received the details from the member for Grey, and I thank him for it. I spoke with Josh first this morning. Josh informed me, as the member for Grey had said, that he'd had difficulty accessing fuel. He had a range of issues that he thought was why that was the case, but I undertook to work to see what we could do to provide information and to assist him. The farm where Josh works with his family farms canola, wheat, cereals, cattle. It's a diverse farm as well, and I want to pay tribute to him and his family, but to all farmers out there who put food on the table and who make a difference. Josh informed me that they access their fuel in terms of the distributor was Air Fuels. They're an independent operator, and what we know is that there have been particularly acute issues from independent players rather than the big contractors because of the way that the system works in their interaction with the fuel suppliers. We found out that they get their fuel from Liberty through the Port Lincoln fuel terminal. Together, we contacted Liberty through the Energy Minister was involved, and we ascertained that they did have shortages in that fuel terminal. They were keeping their supplies for emergency services, particularly for concern about fires and other issues as well. But that just yesterday there had been a ship delivered of fuel to the terminal, and that I was able to ring Josh back again, as I committed to do, to find out for him, and he will be receiving fuel there in the next 48 hours. It's a good result. It's a good result.
Order. Order. Members on my left. Order. I'm going to ask members on my left to cease interjecting. This is order. I want to hear what the Prime Minister has to say. Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, it's a good thing for Josh. We know as well that with the global pressure that's on, many people are in situations like Josh. And we acknowledge that. We work and do the best that we can to make a difference for them, to find out information for them appropriately. I'm reporting to the House, I would have thought, in a way that was respectful of the member for Grey and his constituent. And I'll continue, as will everyone on this side of the House, continue to do what we can to act in circumstances which are difficult for people. We know that that's the case. We can't just wish it away. What we can do is do what we can to take action. I thank all those involved, and I think Josh had already received a phone call from Air Fuels to inform him of what was occurring just 5 minutes before I rang back to inform him of the situation. And he was a delightful young person, and I wish him and his family all the very best.
Call to the honourable member for Hinkler.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Taxi operators in my electorate of Hinkler are questioning whether the government can guarantee reliable diesel supplies to keep wheelchair-accessible taxis on the road. Minister, how did the government allow the fuel crisis to get so bad that essential transport for vulnerable Australians is now under threat?
The call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question, and of course we thank the taxi operators in his electorate for the service they provide to the people in that electorate, like all of our electorates who require special assistance. And of course, that is the reason why we've worked so hard to ensure fuel security in Australia. And the honourable member, I'm sure, would inform his taxi operators that the supply of fuel to Australia continues at the rate we would expect. But of course, as this government has always said from the beginning of this crisis internationally, that there have been real shortages in regional Australia, real shortages, and we've worked hard to ensure that those shortages are dealt with. So, for example, in Queensland, the two relevant terminals for parts of Queensland, Gladstone petrol sales are up 48% during the month of March, and Mackay 55% during the month of March compared to the previous March. Now, that tells me two things. When sales out of a terminal are up so much, that means the demand continues to be very high, but the supply is much higher as well. And that is certainly the case. And I can say that with the release of the minimum stock obligation, which the government instituted, with the requirement, Mr Speaker, sir, that that be delivered to regional Australia. For example, one company has increased its sales by approximately 200 kilolitres a day in Brisbane to wholesalers. In central Queensland and Mackay regions, additional 300 kilolitres has been allocated to 3 local regional distributors to supply mining and rail customers. In far north and North Queensland, an additional 15% allocation is flowing to support Indigenous communities in Cape York. And so these are the sorts of opportunities that have been taken up as a result of that. Now, again, Mr Speaker, as the Prime Minister and I have both made repeatedly clear to members opposite, if you have constituents with whom you'd like us to pay particular attention and speak to them about their particular needs, if there have been shortages, and to put them in contact with the relevant fuel companies. I've done that on plenty of instances with honourable members opposite. The Prime Minister is willing to do it, and I'm also, if the honourable member wants to provide me with details, I'd be very happy to take up the case, find out who the distributor is, and provide that company with as much reassurance as I can. Again, we know that those shortages have caused real concern. I again express my thanks to the taxi companies and transport operators right around Australia who are finding this situation very stressful, and thank them for the work they're doing with those Australians who rely on them, whether they be elderly. Many elderly people rely on taxis, many people with disabilities rely on taxis, and we'll do everything we can to support those industries.
Call to the honourable member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering cost of living relief by making medicines cheaper for all Australians? And how are new drug listings on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme helping Australians living with advanced and high-risk cancers?
Call to the Minister for Health, the Minister for Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you also to the member for Bennelong, who is a very big supporter of a stronger Medicare, particularly the Medicare urgent care clinics at Ryde and at Chatswood, servicing his community. But he's also a great source of advice, Mr Speaker, on medicines policy, because he works so closely with that industry, so much of which is headquartered in his electorate in Ryde, affectionately known as Pill Hill, and also out at Macquarie Park. And one of those companies, Mr Speaker, Merck, is the sponsor of a blockbuster immunotherapy called Keytruda, which is already listed on the PBS for a number of cancer types. But I was delighted on Sunday to join the member for Boothby at the Flinders Medical Centre in Adelaide and the new South Australian Health Minister to announce a new listing for Keytruda that covers 3 new cancer types and takes effect tomorrow. It covers locally advanced cervical cancer, it covers renal cell carcinoma, the most common form of kidney cancer, and it also covers locally advanced head and neck cancer, relatively early-stage cancers compared to the current listings of Keytruda. Today, that treatment costs those patients more than $15,000 for every single infusion. From tomorrow, it will cost just $25, just $25. And we think that more than 10,000 patients every year, Mr Speaker, will benefit from that listing. And the member for Boothby and I were joined by 3 of those patients on Sunday, 3 terrific Australians, Mr Speaker. One of them, Anita Modlinsky, who's a cervical cancer survivor, said this, Mr Speaker. She said, "When Dr Sukumaran told me the cost of this drug, my heart sunk. I thought, how could this drug that's going to save lives cost so much? So for it to be on the PBS now is just an absolute game changer for women. Ben Hale, who was there with his daughter Jessica, is a head and neck cancer survivor who's had a recurrence of that cancer and is undergoing chemotherapy and radiotherapy now. He said, it's just a huge relief to know that I'm not going to be thinking about the financial aspects of this drug going forward. And the wonderful Alan Bridges, who's a renal cancer survivor, he was also there, and he said, I actually wrote to the Health Minister's office requesting that it be added to the PBS. He told the media, I don't take any credit for putting it on the PBS. Perhaps he should, Mr Speaker, but I'm very pleased. He said, it gives people in my position hope for the future, and that is the best thing, Mr Speaker. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Call to the Prime Minister. Order. Order. The Prime Minister has the call.
After 24 questions, Mr Speaker, I ask further questions be placed on the notice paper.
I present the Auditor-General's Performance Audit Report number 27 of 2025-26, entitled Safer Local Roads and Infrastructure Program, Department of Infrastructure, Transport Regional Development, Communications, Sport and the Arts. Call to the Leader of the House.
Thanks, Speaker. These documents are tabled in accordance with the list circulated to the honourable members earlier today. Full details of the documents will be recorded in the votes and proceedings. And I'd also just draw members' attention to the fact that one of the documents is a document from Australia's Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the United Nations to the President of the Security Council in accordance with Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations to report with respect to lawful measures in the Middle East.
Order. If members can leave the chamber quickly and quietly.